in our heart, and literally it was the dream in our heart and a little bit of money in our pocket that got us over to Sydney.
Exactly.
And there's a backstory to that, but we're going to start cooking.
We are going to start cooking.
Because you tried to go to Sydney twice, didn't you?
We did, before that.
And then both times Phil found out where you'd gone.
No, I was pregnant with Daniel. It was 1975. The first moment we heard about Sydney, where it went into Phil's heart, we were in the 48 Oxford Terrace on our Monday night house church, and Alan, an elder in the church, had a son who had a church in Sydney, and we were just, it was filled with all hippies, and it was packed, the house that we were running. And Alan said to Phil, we need a church like this in Sydney. Sydney, we'd never even thought of Sydney as a place, and went into Phil's heart, Sydney. Okay, and that was 1971. Remember, Phil? We had that Turramurra outreach, and people got saved. People that we know today got saved.
But even though we had big success, it was not the right time.
Yeah.
So we went back to New Zealand.
It was awful. Phil was down. He's like, I've missed the call. I'm just going to
Took up painting, gave up the ministry.
We sowed
We
Sydney.
gave it up. Never thought we'd come there again.
Gone.
I got a job as a postman.
Yep.
And delivering messages to people, which I guess I still am. Right.
You're still a postman.
And so was Simon.
And do we know how to deliver?
Like a postman, we always deliver.
Describe that day when you were out on the post run and the Lord spoke to you about
Yeah, I was.
Littleton.
I pretty well could take you there today, actually, because it was like such a relief to hear the voice of God. I was just so happy because I'd been so discouraged. And I felt broken, actually. It felt like I just didn't have any strength to get up and do much at all. So he spoke to me and said, go start a church in Littleton. But I was just glad to know that I was still called. We went out there, nothing much happened over the 3 years we were there. The 30 people pretty much remained the same. 30. I think we went from about 15 to 30 people.
Yeah, but we had some amazing salvations.
But after 2 years
2 or
of
3.
being there, I went on a trip to India. And on the way through, stopped in Sydney. The plane touched down in Sydney. And God said to me on the way there, now's the time.
And you said to us, Chris and I have got the go to Sydney. And so our response was, well, we're sad to see you go. That was it. What am I going to say? But then during the worship, and that was a day when I actually was worshipping, instead of thinking about something, I heard the Lord speak to me. And I've never heard this since, and it had no promise to it. It was 5 words, and you are going to.
Isn't that
clear as crystal. Yeah. So as we were driving home, I said to Helen, I feel the Lord spoke to me. And as soon as I said it, she said, got it. So we said, why don't we fast? And we looked and said, why would we bother fasting?
Right. You knew.
We knew. And then we went to Phil and Chris. And that was really, it was very sobering. Because they said, thrilled, but you have to come on your own steam. We don't have like a missions organisation. We said,
no problem. Yeah, we had nobody actually giving us money or setting us up or no interest nights.
So Simon, you and Phil arrived in Sydney first, and then Helly and I and the kids arrived maybe a couple of weeks later.
Literally.
You got jobs.
And our whole family went and stayed on Simon's and Helen's floor.
Yep.
We lived there for maybe 4 weeks.
St. Ives. Yep.
St. Ives.
it was an adventure.
We hired off the Catholic church, the hall they had across the road in Oaks Avenue. And on the first, and we just took all our meeting down there. And then Mark and Bernie,
that's when
they walked in that night. Now, your sister had an influence in you, hadn't she?
My sister led us to the Lord. And then we were on a break up at Noosa. We went to the Assemblies of God Church in Noosa and ran into this guy called Chris Chetwynd Jones.
I know. Yeah, I remember him.
Who was from Bulgola.
Yeah.
And he said, there's a new church starting.
Yeah.
On the northern beaches area. And we lived in Colorado.
Right.
And there's no mobile phone. It's like
no Google.
Nothing. So he said, I'll call you when we get back to Sydney and let you know. We called him and called him. We could never get him. And one Sunday afternoon, I said to Mike, I don't know, mate, we've just got to go to church, so we'll just go anywhere.
Right.
And Mark said, let me just try him one more time.
And he picked up.
Oh,
And so we jumped.
I said
He
the
said,
surf shop-
DY
the
Surf Club?
Right.
6 o'clock.
right,
Sunday night. And it was 10 to 6.
right.
So we jumped in the car, drove down the car park, you know the story. And,
Tell us.
so I drove into the car park and it was all dark.
It's pitch.
And we thought,
What's that?
mate,
Why
we got
is
the
it-
details wrong. What happened? You know, and we only just had that thought and that mention to each other, and then a guy comes flying into the parking lot. I remember very clearly in his turquoise green Ford Cortina,
Yes.
and it was Paul O'Connell. And I remember just waving his hand out the thing, and he didn't get out of the car. He just sort of screamed out the window and said, "Are you guys looking for the church?" We went, "Yeah." He says, "Follow me. We've moved." And we
That
followed
first night.
him up the road,
Yeah.
and of course, you had apparently said to
Yeah, I
Paul,
said to
Yeah.
Paul, go back down because might be somebody looking for us.
Yeah.
And
good.
we don't know where they are. So it's incredible little hinges
Yeah.
that huge doors swing on,
Swing
right?
on.
And then so we followed him up, walked into the back of the Catholic school hall. You know, very clearly, sounds a bit cliche and corny, but we
it's-
squeezed
it's
each other's
what
hands and we said, "We're home."
Because we didn't know to say that. Like, that was
Yeah,
just the
that was-
exact feeling that we felt.
Yeah.
And we looked at each other and it was like, we're home. We're really home.
People find their place.
Yeah, they
I
come
hear it
in.
all over the
Yeah.
world.
We
We're
create
home.
the atmosphere, the culture
Yeah.
of the presence of God, and then people come in and they do say it. People come up to all of us all the time and say, "I'm home." Do you know what? Those two words are the nucleus of everything that we are all these years later, 40 years later.
People find their place.
One of
they
the things
come
that
in.
people are wondering about is people look at the team that we've had for 40 years and say, well, how in the world do you do that?
That's a good point.
And
What do you think?
The length of time.
one thing I think is this. We actually became each other's family. In some ways we were forced to, which helped us. I think eating together, holidaying together, I think those things. They're part of the picture.
Because we did a lot of holidaying.
And we showed up at the
did.
beach every Monday together with the kiddies.
I think amongst us, the capacity to be friends and still have respect and honor for how God has positioned us and led us. You guys have always been honoring of Chris and I in a recognition of that leadership. And yet we can still do life together.
So this one of the things that I guess we all are as pioneers, but we haven't thought about it, have we? I would never see myself as a pioneer, but we obviously are.
Right. I think C3 has pioneered a bunch of things. We're the first church in Australia to record live praise and worship.
Yes.
And I'm not sure if we're the first, but certainly we were amongst the first, maybe in the world, of churches to have a school of creative arts.
Totally.
Where we promoted arts, drama, film and video, painting, all these things, because they were kind of like regarded at worst as something that was of the flesh, soulish and sinful, and at best something that was tolerated by, and they were the weird crowd in a church. And
Well, I think that pioneering thing in you was the genesis of pioneering, church planting everywhere.
Yeah, well, church planting wasn't even a thing.
It wasn't a thing.
But God, the pioneering thing, I don't know how much credit you can really take. Well, I certainly don't feel like that. I'm just doing what I got told to do. Go plant 10 churches in 10 major cities around the world. He confirmed it. He said, look at this, Decapolis, 10 cities.
I remember that. I remember that conversation.
And so we went and did that, sent these guys out all around the world, and within 4 years, had 10 churches in 10 major cities.
Yeah, what next?
It's astonishing.
Exactly. I think like what listeners need to remember is all those major moves forward were done on the back of prayer and fasting together.
That's exactly right.
Like it wasn't just, this is a good idea, what do
Yeah.
you reckon? It was, we sought God
Sure.
and the Holy Spirit fell and it seemed right to all of us. And if ever one of us has said, I feel like doing this, and the whole has said, we don't do it. And
Right.
not even you.
No, I wouldn't.
You know?
I think also that if you're going to pioneer, everybody has to be prepared to do anything. And that's a big part of our team. We've all been the children's church leader. This guy was our administrator for a while.
I kept on going up to my point of incompetence, moving sideways and doing something else.
I mean, you've been in the Bible college, you've been a leader.
Children's church, Bible college, pastor of the pastors.
Overseer of Europe.
Yeah.
And some of the moves could appear like not always an upward trajectory. Some of them are like sideways. Some of them could appear even going sideways and down. And yet it's not the position or the title. It's because we've got the relationship. We think whatever needs to be done, whatever I need to be, I'll be that. And the ability to change gears for that, I think, creates an A-team.
I remember years ago, I think somebody was talking about this, and I think the comment came out that I think it was in my case this time, but it's probably for all of us. My gift is to do what needs to be done.
Yeah, that's good.
People say, "What's your spiritual gift?" To do what needs to be done.
That's great.
So if I have to lead, I'll lead.
Yes.
It might not be my spiritual gift, but I have to do it.
Yeah, and that's that principle that we were living before we sort of heard about it. The team you're in
Yes.
is more important than the team you lead.
What are the biggest risks we've taken?
Oh, for us, it was definitely leaving the shores of Sydney
and planning
plant
that
church.
first church.
Very much into the unknown. I think that we're so full of vision and so happy and keen.
Yeah.
I think that a healthy measure of naivety was good because it actually got us there.
Yeah.
But then when we faced it, when you got there, you realised how much of a risk it was.
I think also, the relationship calms down the level of risk because I knew, and hopefully you knew, that if anything went skew with, we'd be there for you.
Oh, no, we definitely knew that.
And so that has got to be more valuable
Yes.
than an organisation that is just, saying, here's some resources on your way. Because if there is no heartfelt relationship, there would be no way on earth we'd let you suffer. And we've had people that I've called back out of their position because they are struggling.
They're suffering and the kids are suffering.
Yeah.
We just love it.
Come back.
Come back.
What about you, Simon?
I don't know, to tell you the truth. I would probably say buying a house,
Yeah.
because all the rest of it just seemed like fun. Honestly, going to England seemed like whoopee-doo. Going to Australia, well, fantastic. So strangely, I'd say buying a house.
So you saw all that stuff as adventure rather than risk.
Yeah, I still do.
Yeah.
It's a great adventure.
Yeah.
It's awfully costly, but a wonderful adventure.
It is.
So strangely, I'd say my first house was my most nervy risk moment.
Looking back, you can calculate risk more so than looking forward. And I would say the children factor, taking children with you on the journey, it's a risk that you've got to constantly mollify by giving attention to them in other ways that you can't as normal parents would do. I mean, you never have a Sunday off.
But I think that's what kept us going because we were doing that together, our kids together,
Our fruitfulness together is always going to be greater than our fruitfulness on our own.
Oh.
You'll make any sacrifice to keep that unity and that spirit of friendship alive. And when you realize that your destiny is together, like it isn't just for a little bit of life, a couple of years, but it's actually, you've been called together, that it's a respect for God, saying, He called us together, so we better make this work. Because out of that, it's going to come fruitfulness that is beyond our imagination. And I think even now we're at the end of a compounding effort that has been together, and it'll get easier with more flourishing and more fruitfulness that'll come out of the fruit that we've already seen.
And right now we're seeing it. We're like there've been sacrifices and terrible tears and heartache within our families for whatever reasons, sickness or whatever, trials with kids, and now we're seeing the turning of that page.
Exactly.
We're seeing the sacrifice that we made, and our kids, they are now picking up the gauntlet and saying, we're running with you.
Yeah.
Mum and Dad, we're running with you.
Sure.
And I just think
That's the greatest joy, isn't it?
Greatest joy.
But we've had to get through all that mucky
But that's blood,
stuff,
sweat and tears.
that has happened, and now we're just entering into a new season. we're going to be celebrating 40 years. And for me personally, I think, for me, like the risk or whatever in the future will be to keep growing and to take the risk of what God is asking us to do into our future, Phil and I, and all of us. Like, we're trusting you, Lord, that you've got our back, and we're still pioneers, you know. And I mean, that's a pretty dangerous thing to say to the Lord. We're still pioneers, send us wherever. But that's the risk we take as servants of the Lord, and I'm happy to do it.